measure up.
Eugenie Sage.
With some degree of trepidation given your rulings tonight on relevance, but we'll give it every effort to make sure that the comments are relevant. And if I could just thank the Minister for his contribution to the debate. But I think it's interesting, if you look at the Statistics Act with Section 6 of that Act, and that provides that no government department shall commence or commission any statistical survey or make a substantial alteration to an existing survey without the written approval of the Minister. And Mr Chair, I think that's quite different from the provision that we're seeing in this bill, which has the Ministers actually setting the topics for environmental reporting in Clause 18. In the Statistics Act, it's the actual government statistician which comes up with the ideas and the proposals for statistical surveys. The Minister simply has to approve them. And I think it's quite ironic that we celebrated 800 years since the signing of Magna Carta this week. And from its beginning, this Parliament has adopted the Magna Carta's ideals of individual liberty and freedom and constraint of power. And one of the concepts of the rule of law is checks on the power of the executive. And an independent, non-politicised public service which is able to provide robust advice to ministers is one of the checks on the powers of the executive. And so that is one of our major concerns with this bill, because the regulation-making powers in the bill exist only for the Ministers for the Environment and of Statistics to set the topics for domain reports and synthesis reports. And that is concentrating power in the hands of ministers. It undermines, in our view, the rule of law. And it also signals that this government does not trust the public service. It does not trust senior chief executives. And by enabling the topics to be set by ministers, it is politicising this whole process. That's why my SOP and the changes it proposes to Clause 18 provides for a much more independent and robust system, because under the SOP, the government statistician and the Secretary for the Environment, instead of ministers, would determine the topics to be covered in both the synthesis and the domain reports, and the process that's set out in the bill for there to be consultation with the public, iwi, local authorities and the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment would continue. And instead of having regulations, there'd be no need for those. The topics would be simply notified in the Gazette. And so that's one of the changes in the SOP. The other one other ones I'd like to comment on are the changes to clauses 7 to 10, because clauses 7 and 7 and 10 set out the content of the synthesis reports and the domain reports. The synthesis reports being produced every 3 years, and the domain reports on an occasional basis every 6 months. Now, Clause 7 at the moment lists the matters which the synthesis reports should cover, and the pressures that are causing or may cause changes to the state of the environment, and the impacts that those changes may be having on ecological integrity, public health, the economy, te ao Māori, and culture and recreation. Now, officials told us that that was not intended to be an exclusive list of matters, yet the bill is not clear on that. There is an advantage always in the law being clear. It reduces the scope for litigation. So the SOP seeks to make it crystal clear that this is not an exhaustive list in Clause 7 or in Clause 10, to ensure that there are other matters which are obviously missing here. One of them is just social wellbeing generally. That's not listed in Clause 7 or Clause 10. And the other obvious omission is there is no reference to climate change. The greatest...
Order. I apologise for interrupting the member, but the time has come for me to report.
Members, the House is resumed. Mr. Chair.
Mr. Speaker, the committee has considered the exclusive economic zone
and Continental Shelf Environmental Effects Transition Provisions Amendment Bill and reports it without amendment. The committee has also considered the Environmental Reporting Bill and reports progress. The committee did not consider the New Zealand Superannuation and Retirement Income Amendment Bill and therefore reports no progress. Mr Speaker, I move that the report be adopted.
The question is that the report be adopted. All those in favour will say aye. Against? The report will be adopted. Jamie Lee Ross.
Mr Speaker, I take this opportunity at the end of the evening to just raise a matter that I hope the presiding officer's team could give some consideration to. Members throughout the committee stage have witnessed a number of rulings around the relevancy question that will be made